Section 6 of Germany, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The World Story, Volume 7. Germany, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. Edited by Eva March Tappan. Section 6. Boniface and the Oak of Thor. About 723. By the Right Reverend W. Pakenham, Walsh. Among these efforts and conflicts, the struggle to teach Christianity on the continent, the name of Boniface stands preeminent. He has won for himself the illustrious titles of the Apostle of Germany and the Father of German civilization. His original name was Winifred. He belonged to a family of distinction and was born at Kirton in Devonshire about the year 680. He was destined by his parents for a secular profession, but a visit paid by some of the clergy to his father's house, for the purpose, according to a good old English custom, of instructing the family in religious truth, fired the heart of the youth with the desire for the monastic life. His father was at first much opposed to the project, but, influenced partly by a reverse of fortune, and partly by a dangerous illness, he acceded to the boy's solicitations, and placed him under Abbot Wolfert at Exeter, and eventually at Newchill in Hampshire, where he received his clerical education. He was early distinguished by his deep acquaintance with the Word of God, and by his skill in preaching. He was possessed, moreover, of such tact and prudence, and was of so practical a turn of mind, that he was frequently employed by the community to which he belonged in difficult negotiations, and was even favored with the confidence of his king. It seemed as if honor and distinction awaited the young ecclesiastic in his native land. But loftier aspirations had taken hold of him, and the mantle of the missionary, rather than the mitre of the prelate, became the one object of his desire. It happened in this way. Willibrord, a Northumbrian who had been educated in Ireland, had gone with 12 missionary companions to Friesland. His efforts there had been fiercely opposed by a powerful heathen prince named Radbod, but the tales of heroic endurance and patient faith on the part of the devoted band, which from time to time reached the Anglo-Saxon monasteries, stirred many a heart to its profoundest depths, and amongst the rest, that of the youthful Boniface. He communicated to his superior his ardent desire to go to the aid of the missionary party in Frisia. The abbot tried to dissuade him from the dangerous enterprise, but in vain. With 3 of the community whom he had inspired with his own missionary zeal, he sailed for Friesland. The time of his arrival, however, was unpropitious. Radbod was engaged in war with Charles Martel, a fierce persecution against the Christians had ensued, and Boniface was reluctantly obliged to return to his cloister. It was the winter of A.D. 716, and soon after his return the abbot Winbert died. The brethren unanimously wished him to take the vacant place, but his missionary ardor revived. He declined the proffered honor, and was soon on his way to Rome to obtain the sanction of the Pope for a repetition of his arduous enterprise. The following spring he was crossing the Alps with a commission from Gregory II to preach the gospel in Germany, and when the summer approached, he commenced his labors in Thuringia. The death of Radbod and the victories of Charles Martel had opened a door for the wider preaching of the gospel in Friesland, and for 3 years Boniface associated himself with Bishop Willibrord at Utrecht, and gained successes which surpassed their expectations. Christian churches rose on every side, heathen temples were destroyed, a vast multitude became obedient to the faith. And now honor and distinction came to tempt him in a new form. Willibrord, advanced in age, was anxious that Boniface should succeed him in the bishopric, but the ardent missionary, feeling himself impelled by an inward call, and strengthened in his resolutions by a remarkable dream, declined the honor, and plunged into the forests of Hesse. Here, amidst dangers and hardships, with wars resounding amongst the bordering Saxon tribes, and with the scantiest of supplies for himself and his companions, he pursued his labors, founded his first religious establishment, baptized 2 native princes, and with their protection and his own thorough knowledge of the native tongue, gained his way to the people's hearts, and won multitudes to the faith of Christ. As an illustration of his boldness and success, we may notice his conduct at Geismar in Upper Hesse. There stood there a gigantic and venerable oak, sacred to Thor, the god of thunder. It had been regarded from age to age with superstitious awe and veneration by the people, and beneath its gloomy shade their most solemn rites had for centuries been performed. In vain had Boniface declared against idolatry. The presence of that sacred tree counteracted, in the minds of his hearers, every impression that he made, and even drew back some of his neophytes into heathenism. He determined to strike a blow at this superstition, and destroy one sensuous impression by another. With axe in hand and accompanied by his clergy, he advanced in presence of the multitude towards the object of their awe and worship. The pagans looked on with mingled feelings of wonder, rage, and terror, expecting every moment that the sacrilegious assailants would be struck dead by the avenging deity, and the controversy between the old faith and the new settled forever in their favor. But as the stalwart missionary plied his axe, it was apparent that Thor could not protect his own. A crashing was soon heard in the topmost boughs. The helpless idol thundered to the ground and lay rent and broken by its fall. Their faith in the dreaded deity had fallen with it, and, as on a like occasion long before, a cry resounded from the multitude, "The Lord, He is God!" In order to make the impression lasting, Boniface gave directions that the timber should be used in constructing an oratory wherein the true God might be worshipped. So the work of Boniface went on until he was nearly 70 years of age. He planned to leave his field in the hands of his successor and retire to the convent of Fulda, which he had founded, that his last days might be spent in peace and quiet. But once again the missionary fire blazed up in the old man's bosom. He must visit Friesland yet again to revive the work which, since the death of Willibrord, had been suffered to decay, and to redeem it from remaining paganism. He was now 75 years old, and from that missionary journey he felt that he never would return. He gave his last solemn charge to his successor, Bishop Lull, and then directed that in the book chest, which he invariably took with him on his journeys, there should be placed the famous treatise of St. Ambrose on the advantage of death, and along with it a shroud, in which his body was to be carried back to Fulda. With a retinue of about 50 clergy and laymen, he sailed down the Rhine and was joined by Eoban at Utrecht, and then proceeded toward the eastern part of Frisia. By many the missionaries were received with joy. Multitudes were baptized, and having received further instruction, were directed to meet Boniface upon the eve of Whitsuntide, in order to receive the rite of confirmation. The Whitsun morning dawned. It was the 5th of June, A.D. 755, and on the banks of the Buda, not far from Dockynian, he went forth to meet his children in the faith. But the clash of arms and the shout of an angry multitude soon told that the heathens were at hand. Maddened by the success of the missionaries, they had resolved to dedicate this day to slaughter, and to take vengeance on behalf of their gods. Some of the archbishop's retinue advised resistance, and would have defended him with their lives. But he stepped forward and commanded them to forbear, and to await with patience the crown of martyrdom. "The long-expected day," said he, "has come, and the time of our departure is at hand. Strengthen yourselves in the Lord, and he will redeem your souls. Fear not them that can kill the body, but cast the anchor of your hope on God, who will soon give you an everlasting reward and admission to his heavenly kingdom." It is said that he himself, as the pagans rushed upon him, took a volume of the Gospels, and, placing it beneath his head for a pillow, calmly awaited the fatal blow which was to number him with those who sleep in the Lord. Eoban and many of his companions that day shared with him that blessed sleep, and for many a year might be seen, in his beloved home at Fulda, the shroud which he had carried with him to the scene of his first baffled labors, and the advantage of death, which had been sprinkled with his victorious martyr blood. His spirit, indeed, lived after him in many of his disciples, who, like Gregory of Utrecht and Sturm of Fulda, carried on the peaceful work which he had loved. But sterner and less Christian characters were soon permitted to appear upon the scene, and terribly was the death of Boniface avenged. It was only after many a bloody baptism, on many a fierce battlefield at the hands of the resistless Charlemagne, that the ferocious Saxons were subdued, and after 30 years of strife, during which carnal rather than spiritual weapons were freely used, the Saxons were brought, at least nominally, within the pale of Christendom.
End of section 6.
This recording is in the public domain. Recording by Christina Close.